We're back on. Do you think, Samantha asked Cory Booker, you are too accessible via Twitter? Where should the line be drawn? You think you're too accessible?
Look, the job of...
How many followers do you have, Cory?
About 1.3, 1.4 million.
Wow.
Yeah, I got almost 2.
Okay.
I got 5.
Really? You got 5?
5 million.
Wow.
The job of a local politician is to do constituent services. The old way of doing that, and which we still do, is take phone calls, take emails, go to community meetings. But now I have a way for tens of thousands of my residents to get in touch with me. And for me, it's great. I could crowdsource information. So I now know about a water main break before my engineering staff does. I know about traffic lights go out before my traffic engineer. So I get information now quicker because as a city, we're working together through social media to make our city better.
Do you leave it on even when you sleep?
I actually do, because my BlackBerry, unfortunately, emergency happens.
You must never get sleep.
I sleep irregularly, but look, I'm on call 24 hours, and if something happens, I've got to be accessible. But it's great because, look, in a crisis.
But you can't do that if you become president.
I doubt Barack Obama is responding to his tweets and Facebook page right now. But look, when in a crisis, it helped me during the major snowstorm, or even recently during Sandy. It helps me get help to people. And I had people from outside of Newark saying, I'm worried about my sister and my aunt that's not responsive. And it helped us to find people who needed help that we wouldn't have found otherwise through traditional means.
Okay. Jackie, as a reporter, you focus on stating the facts without imposing any of your political bias. How hard is it to remain a neutral? And of course, if people probably could guess, your father, former Congressman Kucinich, you obviously have a liberal pedigree in your blood.
It's true, but I feel like when you're so close to it every single day, you see that everyone has problems. So it makes it pretty easy just to keep yourself in the center, because no one has the market cornered on sanity or being correct or...
Boy, that sounds like the kind of false equivalency that your father would really hate.
Everyone has their own kind of rebellion.
Very good. You're right.
Look,
I remember Ray Dong Chong once telling me, my father's so disappointed I'm not smoking pot anymore.
but is it a false equivalency to say that no side has a monopoly on the truth? Jack Kemp was the vanguard of empowerment zones, a Republican that's helped bring billions of dollars worth of investment into inner city communities like mine. So no side has a monopoly on the truth. They're not necessarily equivalent, but there's good ideas coming from all corners of this country.
And bad ones. I mean, really.
And bad ones, yeah,
see them all.
Yes.
Climate change, one side's got a monopoly on the truth.
Yeah.
There are a few questions where you have to just
look,
stop playing tennis and say...
There's a reason why I'm a Democrat, and that's absolutely true.
Right.
But as soon as you shut down 58 million Americans who voted for the other party and say there's nothing you have to offer or contribute to our efforts to go forward, then you've really, in my opinion, you've undermined the ability for us to make progress.
Yeah, but... Yes and no. I mean, it's also a problem reaching out a little too much and pretending that the other side has a point when they don't. I mean, this is my thing about guns. I mean, every Democrat has to say, you know what? We love blowing the brains out of animals too, because we're real men and we're sportsmen. What could be more sports-like than blowing the holy fuck out of a bird?
Right, and the fact that, look, I see that. I was frustrated that the word poverty wasn't talked about in the last election. But for me, just very pragmatically, let me give you an example. We brought the Manhattan Institute, which is a right-leaning think tank in New York City, together with local activists and others to create programs for men and women coming home from prison. They saw it as a chance to lower government expenditures and do things that are really popular on the right. But it's created programs in Newark, one of them, which has reduced recidivism rates from in their 60s to 7%. And so this shows that a partnership, when you can find that nexus, you can jump forward when you can bring people together around a common idea.
Okay, but this idea that you can reach, 58 million, yes, you can reach some of them. A lot of them you can't. I mean, the people, I used to complain all of last year about the bubble. Every week we did a segment called Dispatches from the Bubble. I thought maybe they lost so bad they would retreat from the bubble. No, they're just making the bubble thicker. Do you know that it was in the news today? There is now a teabagger Facebook because they do not want to hear any of some wise ass giving them the facts. Right. So they created their own Facebook where they don't have to hear the truth. I mean, Hillary Clinton had it right. They don't live in a world that's based on evidence. And I don't know how you deal with people like that. I really don't.
No, look, neither do I, but I am encouraged. I know you might have a more cynical take that after this election, the issue of immigration is now it's moving forward in a way that it wasn't before.
Because they lost.
Well, that's exactly right. But it wouldn't happen unless people saw that, whether it's for political cynicism, that this is not going to get us elected to national offices, or they began to realize what the data says is that if you create the right kind of immigration reform, you create more economic growth, you create more opportunity for everyone.
But we've been saying that for years.
Right, and folks have been stubborn and not listening. But again, you can't shut off the half of the country or 2/3 of the country.
No.
You've got to figure out ways to reach out.
All right. This week, Bill Gates said that the biggest plague in America was education or the lack of. Do you agree? And if not, what do you think is the biggest issue? Well, that's certainly one that affects every other issue, because if people are not educated about an issue, they can't take it on.
Education is also the key to economic mobility, poverty, specifically with minority communities. We don't call it a dropout rate; we call it a push-out rate, because it's not set up for them to be successful. And so, I think education is absolutely #1 issue we should focus on.
More than
About 5 years ago, I heard an amazing speech by Colin Powell in a small group. He was talking about nuclear proliferation, the war in Iraq, terrorism, and somebody had asked, what's the biggest threat to our democracy in the next 50 years? He didn't miss a beat. He goes, our inability to educate our population. And then he went on about the challenges in America. And so McKinsey has this amazing study that they did that talked about the disparities in education, our inability to close them, and what the impact is to our GDP, and measured at about $2 billion, our failure to close the achievement gap between minorities in this country and non-minorities. And if you think about it, this was 2012. Last year was a historic year. Nobody really talked about it. But it was the first year in American history that more minorities are being born than people in the majority, which is a celebration of our diversity. The problem is if we keep have the same education outcomes in the future, the people who will be 18 years from now, we'll be relying on to produce for us, to create jobs for us, will not have won't have the education skills.
And also, education, the educational cycle has the most points of intervention. So if you missed out on early education, you can intervene at a certain point.
Adult
and if you,
education, right?
I thought that they were lost after a certain point. I thought
no, it depends if you're a minority or if you're
a scientist of the brain. Isn't it true that if you don't get to them very early, they're gone?
Well, both are true. There are critical periods for certain things where it's easiest to learn those things then, and if you don't learn those things then, you actually can't learn them. So if for some reason, you don't, your senses aren't integrating with the environment in the first year of life, you will be functionally blind even if everything is made normal after that.
Look, some of the greatest activists in this country's history were African American slaves who, during abolition, who didn't have the formal education but found ways to educate themselves and become some of America's greatest leaders. There's always hope. There's always hope for people and an opportunity to
there is
empower yourself
truth
education.
to give me the child and I'll give you the man. And one of the great penalties we are paying in this country is that we have an attitude in arguably half of the country toward raising children, and the homeschooling movement, I think, is pretty ominous in terms of what the facts it's filtering out and the craziness it's importing from the first century. And so you want people to have their cognitive horizons really expanded as early as possible. And
I agree with that, but that's not to say you cannot intervene at a later time.
Oh, no,
there's been people incarcerated that come out and learn another language or new,
But set the kids
you said
down in front of real time.
Right.
If there's any message that we want to get to the audience is if you have a toddler, a baby, an infant, even if it's still in the womb, get in front of the TV when real time is on.
It's going to learn another language.
Thank you very much, everybody. Sorry, Cory, we got to go. See you next week.
Real Time with Bill Maher, Friday night at 10. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com.